Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining our professional development session today. This is the second session in a series of workshops created by the Good Project that reviews our core concepts. And today we're going to be talking about excellence. So as you know, excellence is one of the three aspects of our framework of good work, with the other two being ethics and engagement. And today we're going to be diving a little further into what does excellence mean, and how can we all think about it, and what are some puzzles around excellence that still exist? So if you were with us last time, or if you viewed the video of our first professional development session in this workshop, we reviewed our research with workers and with students. And we talked about how the Good Project's goal is really to help people reflect and think more intentionally about their work on a day-to-day basis. That could be the work that they do in a professional field, it could be work that they do as a student, or work in some other area. And we presented our good work framework, which, as I mentioned, has three components: excellence, ethics, and engagement. So we're going to look a little bit closer at excellence today, which is the first of those three elements. And we're going to try to understand, what does excellence mean? So what is excellence? When we originally interviewed workers at the Good Project, we were looking for examples of respected work in those conversations. So the Good Project spoke to 2,000 different professionals across domains. As a reminder, those included educators, lawyers, doctors, people who worked in theater, journalism. And really, we were asking people, what is the work that you respect? What would you consider work to be coming to mind when you think about something that you want others to remember or know about your profession? And what we came to understand is that that type of excellent work is associated with high quality being an adjective and technical proficiency. So excellence on our project really has focused on those terms. So excellent work being high quality work and work that is technically proficient. So it fulfills maybe a certain way or process that demonstrates a level of skill, and it also is up to a certain standard. As an example from our research, so this is one of the dilemmas from our website that is about a student who is thinking about, and I think we would say doing, excellent work. So I'm just going to pick out a few things from this short version of the dilemma. So it's about a student named James, who's a senior in high school. And you can see he takes his responsibilities as chair of his school's newspaper seriously. He wants to put out a high quality newspaper. And when he began to first work at the paper, he changed the newsroom culture from one being when in doubt, make it up. That's what journalists were doing before he joined, to trying to encourage people to feel more personally accountable for the work that they were doing. And he also tried to encourage the study of journalism by establishing the Association of School Journalists. And he invests a lot of personal time and feels that it's worth his time to do so. So you can see here there might be a few things in this story that would indicate that James is thinking about or doing excellent work in his field of journalism. It's the idea of thinking about your responsibilities, but also changing the newsroom culture to being one where people feel accountable and are trying to put their best and be up to standard for what we would expect of journalists in their stories. And then also the idea that he's putting in effort and time. So from this story and from what we could extrapolate from it and other examples of excellent work, we can see that excellence often relates to some of these items that you see on the screen and others. So first, maybe is the idea of expertise. So excellence being you're able to use the expertise that you've developed at a particular job or in a particular field, the set of skills and habits that you've acquired in order to do that thing well with technical proficiency. Maybe it's to do with standards as well. So you're reaching a certain benchmark. It could do with effort. So excellence might be represented most when you're putting a lot of work ethic into what you're doing. And then is the idea of openness to failure, finally. So the idea that excellence might come when you're taking a risk or you're pushing beyond what you normally do. I'm sure there are other things that you can all think of that are related to excellence in your point of view. So this is an activity that you can do on your own or with others if you are with colleagues or other people doing this workshop. Just take maybe 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, and choose an image from the Jamboard that's available at this link. And what you will see is a series of images there that might have something to do with excellence. And just consider what words related to excellence come to mind based on the picture. So take some time to look slowly at it and think closely about what really is popping out to me about excellence here. What words or phrases come to mind? And you can also feel free to raise any wonderings that you might have about the image or about the issues it raises about excellence. I'm going to show you the Jamboard now, so you have a sense of what it looks like. So these again are the instructions, but as you go through the Jamboard, you'll see there are images here that might say something to you about excellence. So you can see here, this is a person, maybe at the top of a hill or a mountain looking out at the sky. This is a newspaper image of Nelson Mandela saying the struggle must continue, and so on and so forth. So your task is to choose one of these images and just think closely and carefully about what it raises to you about what excellence means. And after you've done that, you can come back. So you might want to pause the video here and just take a moment to do that activity. So I hope that the activity helped you think about your own views of excellence and what that word means to you and what it can mean as a part of our framework of good work. I hope that it maybe raised some new insights for you and for your colleagues if you're doing this in a group. Now I want to raise one maybe puzzle or perhaps a paradox about ethics that we've been thinking about a little bit on our project. So that's the idea of process or product. So when we think about excellence, we think it can really be demonstrated in these two ways in particular. So perhaps excellence is really a process on the left. So excellence being your continuous attempt and striving, keeping that word excellence in mind, trying to do work that is high quality. And that might be different day to day. It might be open to personal interpretation and personal limitations. And it's also about recognizing your own capabilities and personal bests. So this would be the idea of process. Excellence is really about what I can do and where I am on my journey day to day. And then on the right, process versus product is what we want to think about. So product being the result or the endpoint. So maybe when we describe excellence, it's about the excellent piece of work that has been produced. And that might be qualifying as excellent by meeting a certain standard or having a certain quality. So these two ways of thinking about excellence can sometimes be in tension with one another. And I'll go through just a few examples. So you might want to consider some different workplaces or different professions. These are just three I picked kind of at random, but there are probably other professions in which you could think about this tension of process versus product. So for a musician, maybe the process is the process of practicing, becoming skilled at an instrument, trying to be excellent as you are practicing. For a scientist, it could be maybe the practice day to day of running a particular scientific experiment. And for a doctor, maybe it's seeing and diagnosing patients as a practice. But when we think about the products of these, the stakes could be very different from one another. For a musician, the product could be perhaps a final performance or a recording. If the musician doesn't meet a particular standard in that way, perhaps as an audience, we could be forgiving, or maybe the musician can re-record again. The product maybe doesn't need to be meeting a particular standard as crucially as it would for a scientist or a doctor. So maybe a scientist and a doctor, the stakes are higher in order to meet the standard of what an excellent product could be. And we might expect, especially for example, for a doctor here, that if the product that they're producing is patient health, there really isn't much room for error. So when we think about how to maybe expand this analogy or this dynamic of process versus product to what students are doing in the classroom, as educators, you can probably think about how process and product play out in that kind of environment. So maybe as an educator, the process could be students being on a learning journey and trying to reach excellence, being aware of their limitations, being aware of their capabilities, and also being aware of where they are on that journey and what they can do as their personal best day to day. But the product could be that we actually want students to be achieving at a certain level and maybe, doing things like reading at grade level or achieving a certain grade. Those could actually be important at the end of the day as well. So it's kind of this tension of holding process versus product together, and maybe it not being versus, but being together, and thinking about in what kind of moment is a process-oriented approach to excellence one that we can take, in what moment might a product-oriented approach to excellence be more appropriate. So with that in mind, sit with these questions for a moment, either on your own or together with others. Think about, when do you think that a focus on process-oriented excellence is more appropriate for your students? And then second, when is a focus on more product-oriented excellence more appropriate? And then finally, how can you emphasize both of these aspects of excellence to your students so that they understand that both or either of these might be true at any given time? What are some practices that you might use, or some ways of talking about this in your classroom that you have in mind? So pause the video here and think a little bit about this. So from your reflections or your conversations, I just want to use a quick think, puzzle, explore routine from Project Zero to break down our thoughts. So what do you think you might know now about what excellence is and what it means? What puzzles or questions do you continue to have about excellence? And then how might you explore your puzzles about excellence now that you hopefully have a bit of a better understanding of your own definition of excellence from our first activity, and then also this tension that exists when we talk about excellence between process and product. I hope that through this session, you've come to see that we on the Good Project have an evolving understanding of what excellence is, and that is okay and to be expected. One thing that we want to point out especially is that excellence shouldn't be contributing to student stress. As a part of our good work framework, we do talk about what excellent work is, but it's not to say that students should feel like they need to be the best or achieving at perfection in order to be excellent, but excellence can happen and be a part of their process of learning. Second, that excellence can be responsive, as we've said, to personal capabilities, skills, and limitations. We are all on a journey towards excellence. And then you can differentiate between needing to reach the standard of excellent work and producing that as the product, and trying your best as a good worker as part of your identity and practice each day. And there are more insights that you all likely have developed and can share with one another or with your colleagues. So thank you for joining. I hope you've taken away some insights from this session and look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much.